Hello, everybody, and welcome to Unapologetics Live, the podcast where we read a Christian article and explain why it's stupid. And I am Brentley, and today we have a special guest. We got Secular Rarity, Elliot. How we doing, man?
Woo! I'm excited, man. I'm excited. This one's good. It doesn't take very long in this article before we get to some serious ridiculousness, in my opinion. If for those of our wonderful viewers that are watching the video, you can see the very first sentence already, and you can see I try to come to these things with evidence. I try to come with receipts, and here we are already, in my opinion. So yeah, it's a fun one. I can always count on you to provide me with an article that I had not heard of and truly would have been fine without ever seeing, but really provides some entertainment and an ability for me to just demonstrate how easy it is to debunk really stupid claims. That is one of my favorite things, is when you can read something from somebody or hear a really strong claim, and then with 3 words typed into a Google search bar, you can find out just how unfounded and bankrupt that claim is. So it's really great.
Yeah.
It's a fun thing for me. I love doing it. So yeah, I'm happy to be back, brother.
Cool. Excellent, excellent. Yeah, this one it's like, I swear, it's almost like you said, like they're trying to find reasons to get angry.
Yes.
That don't make any sense. So I do want to give a quick trigger warning to everybody. We are going to read through this piece of shit word for word. So just so you know, I will try, if they do, like, I really do try to like not say the shitty things that they say. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If they say like something really gross, then I will skip over like slurs and shit. I'm not going to say slurs or misgender.
Yeah. I don't believe this one goes that far. But yeah, they get pretty close, I think. So
I mean, it's like you said, just the first fucking sentence is, would you be willing to go to jail for using the wrong pronouns?
Yeah.
Fucking what, man? Where's that ever happened?
Yeah.
And it's not like this
is something we heard, I think maybe one of the first times, really getting around the public discourse was years ago when Jordan Peterson was arguing and yelling and crying about stuff. The reason that this is phrased like that is specifically because people know that it's inflammatory, right? Because, even on the let's just be a little derogatory, even on the most of wokiest, of leftiest, of radical, liberalism, even on that extreme side, I think you are really never going to find people that are going to actively say, let's start passing laws that puts people in jails for simply using the wrong pronouns, right? Because the way that this is worded right here is it's worded in such a way as to say, like, even if you're mistaken,
yes,
if you just walk up to an individual you've never seen before in your life and you go, hello, ma'am, and they go, excuse me, it's sir, like the cops are going to suddenly bust out of the fucking walls and just start throwing handcuffs on you, And so that's obviously ridiculous. And again, I've never heard of a single person that stands on that stance.
No, it's harassment. Like, and this is something that they will do, though, so that they can then like cry about it, and be like, oh, look, all I did was use the wrong pronouns. And it's like, yeah, but over and over in a really shitty way where you're clearly trying to get a reaction. That's different.
Yeah. And I'll let you get through the next sentence or two, but I actually pulled up this bill. Again, it would be such a shame if somebody makes a strong claim like that to start off, their opinion piece. And then it's so easily debunked as just literally reading the bill. That would be a shame for anybody who wrote, an op-ed like Peter Demos. That would just be terrible. if the entire premise of their whole freaking article that they spent however long or short on was able to be debunked that quickly. So hopefully that's not the case for him, because that would be embarrassing. But if it is, then we just have to do our job and air this out. So
It's a
yeah.
big waste of digital ink right there.
Yeah,
Greta
yeah,
Thunberg would be
super,
very
super
upset.
huge waste. Yeah, yeah.
All that waste. Okay, so here we go. So that question was on my mind recently as I prepared to preach at a church near Detroit on the topic of Christian civil disobedience.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm trying to. This is because I've read through this a couple of times, and I pulled out some stuff that I knew I wanted to talk about. But the problem is that he mixes stuff really quickly, and so it's like I want to yell about Christian civil disobedience and how stupid of a phrase that is for a lot of different reasons. But I'm gonna wait because I gotta talk to you about how wrong he is on this Michigan House of Reps bill first. So
Oh,
it's like
right.
we got to
Okay.
progress, we got to take our time with it. We got to stay calm, but it's a lot of stupid things all at once that needs to be pointed out. So, yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because I'd never heard of that either.
Yeah,
But all
there you go.
right, here we go. Just a few days prior, and long after I had started to prepare my sermon, the Michigan House of Representatives passed their latest progressive bill that could make using the wrong pronoun a felony, complete with jail time and fines up to
Ooh,
$10,000.
sounds terrible. It
You could
sounds
just
terrible.
you can just say felony there too. Like we all
Yeah.
know that felonies come with jail. Like,
Yeah, that's normally
like,
pretty
wait, the kind of
standard.
felonies that
Yeah.
come with jail time? This is crazy. What
Yeah,
kind of
yeah, yeah.
felony is that?
Yeah, like
Jesus.
there's a bunch of felonies out there that are just like mandatory release this person. That's odd.
Yeah, it's a
Odd.
literal
So
slap on the wrist. You just, hand.
so this bill that our good friend Petey is talking about right now is one of those bills that when you go to actually look at and read, you may get halfway through the bill and realize that the bill is already over about half a page ago, and it is now just defining terms. First off, I don't think the vast majority of our populace in the United States has ever really attempted to go through any actual legislation. Doing so is difficult in a lot of different ways. And one of the reasons that it is difficult is because in the United States, we practice something called common law. This has been something that has been throughout our country. It is the way that we understand and interpret the meaning of legislation, especially older legislation that we can't just go ask people about today. Like, again, it would be a super huge shame if like all of the people that are writing this bill in Michigan are like just blatantly alive and you can just go hear what they have to say on it. That would be a shame, because then you could ask them a question and then they could answer it and say things like, oh, this is actually pretty commonplace language in this bill. This specific bill is something that has occurred a myriad of times, not just in Michigan, but in every state in the United States and in the federal sense as well. What this bill is specifically redacting older versions of legislation and updating them for new understandings. Okay. So this is
Okay.
something that we have done, again, on a regular basis. For a very long time in the United States, it was completely legal for, let's say, just throwing out weird examples, like let's say a white guy to actively beat the shit out of somebody for no other reason than the fact that their skin was dark. Okay. Crazy. I know. Ridiculous how that was the case, but it was. For a very long time, it was legal. Then there was a period of time where it wasn't legal, but we also never criminalized it.
Yeah, it was
And
like seatbelt laws or something. Like
yeah,
we were just like, okay, but we don't really. That's
yeah,
fine, buddy.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Like, hey, look, we've got seatbelts, But you really don't have to put your child in one if you just have a strong compulsion otherwise. Like there was a period of time where drinking alcohol and driving a vehicle was completely legal simply because of the fact that there was no prohibition against it. So for like decades, people would just drive super plastered and just kill people. And people would be like, man, what a terrible thing. Wish we could figure out how to stop this. And then finally somebody was like, why don't we just make it illegal to drive drunk, guys? That seems like a good one.
We can measure this. We can, we can
like
check.
we can totally figure this out. So there's a period of time in the United States where like the idea of a hate crime really didn't exist, right? And for some obvious reasons. I think one, because there was a period of time when we were just outright shitty to a lot of people for immutable qualities and characteristics that supposedly are enshrined in our, Constitution and so forth, the founding documents and all that. But basically, we started to update these things on a regular basis once we realized that there were aspects of these laws that did not encompass everything. Right. So, for instance, I'll use this example because this is actually something that's come up in a couple of different places recently, and I think is worth talking about. So, the caste system is something that is not exactly about your race. It's not. It's not exactly about the color of your skin. It's also not exactly about the country that you come from, your national origin. It also isn't exactly about your religion, because caste exists in Islam, in that area of the world, in that the Indian subcontinent and so forth. And it's not just found in Hinduism, right? There are people that are not Hindus that are still unfortunately afflicted by this. It's not exactly about your economic status. It's not about your sexual orientation or your gender identity. It's not about any of those things. It is its own specific thing that is different. And by not having on the list of protected classes caste, you unfortunately allow a lot of individuals to fall through the cracks and be discriminated against in a way that really should fall under hate crime laws, right? So if, for instance, somebody were to, let's just as an example, if, for instance, a boss were to walk up to one of their workers one day and just start yelling slur after slur after slur, anti-Semitic slurs at this worker, and then fire them and say it's because, and then say a bunch of anti-Semitic slurs, well, that's a problem. And not only is that a problem just on like a moral level, hopefully we all agree on that. We don't need to convince anybody why that's bad. But it's also a problem on a legal level that is protected, because that could fall under either the religion side of it, if that individual is a religious Jewish person, or it could just simply fall under the ethnicity side of it if they are Jewish by heritage, right? So the problem is, though, right now, if you go out there and you start yelling at somebody and making fun of them and criticizing them for being in a particular class, especially a lower class, right? Like the Dalits are the lowest class. They are often the ones that experience this hatred. If you go do that and then you fire them and you tell them that's the reason, there's actually nothing protecting them. There's no law in place that protects those people right now throughout the United States. And that's problematic, okay?
Yeah.
This bill, I said all that to say this, because I'm finally going to get back around to it, I swear, folks, which is, that is what this bill does. This bill just updates prior language that has existed for decades and makes it something that is now applicable in today's time. That's really all it does. It basically just says we're changing the one in the past that says an ethnic crime to a hate crime, because it's not just about ethnicity. And it would make no sense to say this is an ethnic crime when what you are doing is discriminating against somebody because of, let's say, their religion, That's a protected class. Whether or not the rest of the atheists out there with us say, oh man, I think it's, hey, we can make fun of Christians all the time. It's like, yes, you can, but you can't fire somebody because they're Christian. Okay.
Exactly.
You can't criminalize somebody because they're Christian, right? You can say that the ideas are hateful. You can criticize the ideas all day, right? But the people themselves are not criminalized because of the fact that they hold a particular belief or their heritage is from something particular. So again, what this law does is exactly the same thing that we have in almost every state in the country already, right? And even on a federal level. It literally just updates the language to include the fact that if you are purposefully discriminating against somebody due to their gender expression or gender identity, you have the potential of having a court case brought against you. You have the potential of receiving a fine. Again, fine up to $10,000. You can be fined a single dollar. You can be. That is possible, right? There are some laws that have a mandatory minimum out there. This is not one of them. It just isn't. And I think mandatory minimums might have problems in and of themselves, but that'll take me down too long of a rabbit trail there. But the point is, like, already this person has completely obfuscated the framing of this bill. And if you were simply to change the way that this is stated here, absolutely everybody would agree with it, because this bill honestly is nothing. This bill is a nothing burger. It is 100% just doing the bare minimum to keep pace with things that we understand. Again, there was a period of time in the United States where criminalizing somebody or beating the crap out of somebody in broad daylight simply because they were homosexual really wasn't a thing. Like, yeah, cool, you beat somebody up and that's not okay. But there was a time where we had on the books that said, if you beat somebody up in public and you're specifically calling them the N-word repeatedly, that's a hate crime, and that gets extra punishment because it is extra heinous. But that didn't exist for homosexuals. So what did we do? We updated the law, and we included sexual orientation as being included in those protected categories, which again, it is. It falls under the category of sex. It absolutely does. And anybody that has a disagreement with that, I just ask you, would you do the same? Would you treat somebody the same if, for instance, you say, well, here's a problem. We've got this man marrying this man. And it's like, right, so if the sex of one of those individuals was changed, then there wouldn't be an issue. Correct. Well, then there you go. You're discriminating against these people based on sex. Like, it's that simple. It is that simple. And exactly. So, again, this 100% falls in line with all the other things that are already on the books in existence, both in the United States, in individual states, on a federal level, in other countries around the world. This is absolutely common language, boilerplate. The bill is boring, is what I'm telling you, folks. It is not interesting in the slightest. It does not deserve this amount of attention. I have so ungraciously stopped Brentley from continuing on in this article for the last 10 minutes. It doesn't deserve this much attention from me, but I have to say all of this because this asshole goes out and writes this long article and just completely misframes it the entire time. And it's just like, again, it is so simple. This is so basic, and a slight amount of civic understanding about the United States and how legislation is done. Nobody would look at this and think anything. Nobody would take a second glance because the bill is so freaking tiny, because basically all it does is go, hey, you guys remember how we had that other law for a really long time? We just think we should add a couple of things to it and then change some of the outdated language on stuff. Like, we're including sexual orientation in here, so we probably shouldn't call it an ethnic crime anymore. It's kind of weird, right? Yeah. Just hate crime. Yeah, we should just do the same thing that everybody else has done already across the country. Yeah, cool. Everybody feel good about that? Awesome. Great. Like, that's it. It's nothing. It is absolutely nothing. But again, this is what happens is this guy writes, 3 sentences and then gets to frame this in such a way, and that just travels all over the world, right? Just like our good friend Jordan Peterson, right, gets to post one freaking video yelling and screaming that he's going to go to jail for misgendering somebody, and then you just go read the law, and it's like, oh, this is actually pretty standard language. Like, this isn't nothing about this is particularly inflammatory, except for the fact that the way you framed it,
I
right?
was gonna say, yeah, because I was gonna say I don't, I watch a lot of stuff where they bring up like really like great progressive like strides forward and everything. Never heard a damn thing about this one.
Yeah, this is not a this is not a great progressive stride forward. This is the bare minimum of keeping pace with our knowledge of the world around us. It's honestly one of those moments where it's like, oh man, wait a second, are you telling me that technically up until now we could legally discriminate against people just because of their sexual orientation, because of their gender identity? Man, I feel like we should have figured that one out a while ago, guys. Maybe a little bit behind on this. If this is the latest progressive bill from Michigan, I feel bad for the progress that they've been making. Now, granted, I'm not positive that my state of Tennessee has gender identity and expression as a protected class, but I think that's, for a few obvious reasons. We've got currently a Republican Christian nationalist government that is actively trying to make our state hell on earth. But that's just my opinion.
I totally feel you on that down in Florida.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. We know. Yeah, right. I'm not sure either of our states have made this progress yet. But again, a very basic understanding of laws in the United States would tell you that nothing about this bill is outside of the norm. Nothing about this bill is particularly inflammatory, and just flat out, you will not go to jail for using the wrong pronouns. Just like as maybe I think it is something that you shouldn't do. Maybe I think it's a bad idea to just go around using the N-word regularly to offend people of color. I think that's bad. You know what, though? You're not actually going to go to jail for that. You're not. Just plain and simple. And I think that's the right call. As messed up as that can be, like, you have a right as a human being to stand up and say hateful, disgusting things like that. But yeah, there is a line, and this bill just puts Michigan just at the bare minimum of being in that book. It's silly. It's weird because, yeah, again, it technically means like Nazis get to go say their terrible things. They do, though. They do.
Yeah.
But if you repeatedly say those things in a manner that is clearly aggressive and harassing of individuals, especially if that is connected with violence or threats, especially if that is connected, then that's when this law kicks in. You accidentally misgender somebody, or you misgender somebody on purpose, and then they correct you, and you grumble, and you walk away, and you start saying a bunch of slurs under your breath, or you say them to your friends. Nobody's coming for you. That isn't what this bill does. It's not the point of it. And framing it that way is purposefully stoking tensions, because let's just yell about the trans people. That seems to be what the playbook is from the right now, because they know it works. Unfortunately, they know it gets people angry.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, like if it's in the context of like at a workplace or something like that, or a school, shit like that, where people pay to go to those places and have the right to be there as a member of the public. Yeah, you can't be doing that stuff there. But like, yeah, if you're even online, you can go to 4chan. Nobody's going to arrest you for going to 4chan.
Absolutely. And this is, I know I've gone very hard. Just we haven't made any progress hardly, Brentley. I'm so sorry about that. Right. I swear I'll keep moving. But this is why I will hardcore criticize the Supreme Court and a good handful of their recent decisions. The recent decision regarding the wedding website designer is so disgustingly wrong. And one of the reasons is because it puts us back into a time where Black individuals in the United States, especially ones in the South, had to collect a book by themselves. They had to physically go from place to place to find individuals who ran businesses in small towns that wouldn't lynch them in their sleep. They collected these places, wrote it down, and published it themselves and had to distribute it quietly. That's what the Green Book is. That's what the Green Book is. It is a map that saved people's lives as they were doing nothing but trying to travel from one state to the other, which is a constitutional right, a fundamental aspect of what it means to live in the United States. That is what happened in our country because it was flat out not illegal for a hotel at midnight in a thunderstorm to look at a Black family and slur and just say slur after slur after slur and then kick them out on the streets. Okay. There was a period of time where you, as the business owner, could call the police officer to kick out that family for no other reason than the fact they were Black. That's disgusting. That is absolute shameful aspect in our history. And there was a period of time where that was completely legal. And then finally, our Supreme Court said, if you're going to be open to the public, you must serve the public, period, end of sentence. Now, you can still create a private establishment that is 100% discriminatory. You can absolutely do that, okay? Totally legal still. Seems a little weird, but totally legal still. But if you open your doors to the public, you have to serve the public, and you're not allowed to discriminate against people for a handful of different things, these protected classes. Race is definitely on there. Race and ethnicity, 100% on there. Your sex, your sexual orientation, abso-freaking-lutely. Your gender identity and gender expression absolutely are a part of that. And they need to be codified as such. We need to make that bare minimum progress in society. And the Supreme Court recently decided to take a major step back on that. And that's gross. And that's why we need these bills. That's why this bill from Michigan is absolutely needed. Because if our Supreme Court wants to gut these very basic fundamental protections on a federal level, then they need to be enshrined by the states. They have to be, because otherwise we're going to see a return to the 40s and 50s, where there is an entire group of people in our country that is not able to access the bare minimum of what it means to be a United States citizen. That's gross. Everybody should be against that. Absolutely everybody, especially the hardcore America First people. There's a reason that we're the greatest nation in the world, and it's because we protect all of our citizens. That's the answer. Not because we actively discriminate against people and make that legal. So I swear I'm off my soapbox now. I swear I am. I'm going to move on. I will. But I had to get that in strong because it is so frustrating, especially when paired with that Supreme Court decision. It is a major, major step back. And I genuinely want to instill in people a feeling that our Supreme Court is not legitimate. I just do. It's not a legitimate body anymore. It has absolutely grown out of its original intention and is way, way too powerful. And we just need to make changes. We just do.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Anyway. No, I totally agree. It's really frustrating, like all the different solutions for it. I don't know. It seems difficult, to, I wish they would have just gone ahead and stacked it, but
Yeah. And yeah, it's a whole crazy conversation because it has become a branch that has truly outsized authority. right?
No.
It absolutely has way too much power. The checks and balances on it are essentially non-existent. And in part, that is the fault of both our Senate, um, our Congress as a whole. That is partly their fault, and it's partly our fault as the average person, because for a very long time we held such a high reverence for that position. When you were a Supreme Court justice, we basically thought the sun shone out your ass.
Yeah.
And that's on us. We got to stop feeling like that. We got to stop feeling that these people are somehow just infallible, incredible legal minds. They're not. They're not. Half of them haven't even sat on freaking benches, you guys. Go look through the history of our Supreme Court. Like, it's not as like, what did Amy Coney Barrett do to get that job, right? What did she actually do?
Be
And
an
when you go look
extremist.
at yeah, when you go look at it, you're gonna be disappointed. You're gonna be like, man, I could have sworn you had to be like a super long-term judge or something. Nope, sure don't. Sure don't. Get a law degree and that's it. That's all you need, guys. She's more accomplished than just a law degree, but also not by much. So like, let's anyway, I swear we're back to it. Okay,
It's all
back
right.
to it.
It's
It's
all
not a
good.
coincidence. This is not a coincidence. This is divinely ordained, Brent. That's what happened. All
I was
right.
gonna say coincidence. Yeah. Uh, no, I believe it was divinely ordained. Oh my good God. Okay.
Ridiculous.
Have you ever considered how we as Christians in America are more like Pilate than we'd like to admit? Pilate knew that Jesus was innocent, yet he succumbed to social fear, demonstratively washing his hands of all responsibility before the masses.
So this is great. This one's great. And don't worry, folks, we're gonna get back to like Christian civil disobedience. He goes a little
It's
bit further, I think, into it, but
some point, yeah.
I want to point this out about the pilot analogy here. I'm particularly interested as to why he chose that one. Um,
I know, right?
yeah, it's odd to me, but I'd like to point out something that I think is really worthwhile. Um, this is in Matthew's gospel. Okay. So Matthew is the second gospel. It seems to go Paul's letters, the fake Paul letters, Mark, and then Matthew. So Matthew expands on some things that Mark talks about. And if you are at all interested in what any of the scholarship is, you don't need to change your whole theology, but you should actually just go learn about your book. So if you do that, you'll come to find that Matthew is often considered a gospel that is attempting to speak in a language that the Jewish people would be more comfortable with, right?
Yeah.
With that
That,
being said, go
that was
ahead.
the one where like Jesus, like he follows a lot of the Jewish laws and stuff like that. Like
Yeah,
they're
and they're
trying to.
like specifically pointing them out and talking about them and saying like, "Hey, like look at me, I'm Jesus. I'm doing all the Jewish stuff. Like obviously I'm super real. Look at all the Jewishy stuff I know." And it's
Right.
like, "Yeah, okay, laying it on a bit thick, Matthew, but all right, cool. We got it. We got it."
Right, because they like so just real quick, there's the
Yep.
the four gospels, right? And then you have they claim, and this I learned this when I was a Christian, that each of the different gospels was directed to a different
Yes.
group of people, right?
Yes.
Like one of them was well, I think it was Luke, was like directed to the Romans, and it's like real
Yes.
short and to the point,
Yep.
right? No, nothing added. And then John is the one, so it's like the Jews, the Gentiles, or the Jews, the Romans, I think, and the John was to the world. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
was supposed to get that
Mm-hmm.
one. So yeah, it's just each one was kind of like trying to rope in a
Yes.
different demographic, right?
Yes,
So
and it's purposeful. This is something that again I think, you know, really gives your faith a more robust foundation. Um but I ultimately think it leads you to be like, why would you trust the accuracy of this? But hey, some people don't go as far as me. But anyway,
right.
the this gospel is well known as being a gospel that was attempting to frame Jesus's life and of course Jesus's death specifically around the Jewish people. And it is fairly common for this scene relating to Pilate, it is fairly common for scholars to talk about this as an explicitly anti-Semitic argument. Okay? The reason that Pilate washes his hands so publicly in the gospel, the reason that Pilate is so adamant about not wanting to kill Jesus. Oh, he just couldn't help it. The crowd was too strong. Oh no. And who was that crowd? Jews. That's who was that crowd. Why?
Yeah.
Why was that the crowd? Because the Jewish people killed the Messiah. Therefore, our hatred is justified. That's how that verse has been used throughout history. That is most commonly cited as a potential as to why this scene plays out so extensively in Matthew. Nobody else mentions it. None of the other gospels mention it. Now, that's not uncommon. We know that all of the gospels don't really line up in a lot of ways, but it seems kind of weird that this one text that seems to be real Jewish for a lot of it then has this point where it kind of seems to be hardcore criticizing the Jews. You know what, though? We see that today. We absolutely understand this playbook. It happens all the time. One example of this is some of these bot accounts over the last handful of years that have been utilized by various actors around the world to sew themselves in as a legitimate source, right? You start seeing this account, it starts saying all these things that are like super duper liberal. And you're like, man, that must be, that person's real. They're serious, they're on my side. And then you slip in this one thing and you go, man, this is, they're going too far. And you go, oh, wow, you know what? Yeah, that's a good point. And I've agreed with this person on so many of the other things. Yeah, maybe I should have. And the next thing you know, it goes a little further and it goes a little further and it goes a little further. This is what happens with radicalization a lot of times. We see people that slowly start to go down this pathway. And one of the reasons is because they've got this source that seems to speak to them really, really well. But then there's that one little anti-trans thing that comes in at the end. And they go, maybe that's a good point. Maybe I could, okay, I see it. And they slowly start going down that route. So again, it's funny to me that he uses that to say we're more like Pilate than we'd like to admit, succumbing to the social fear. Oh, the masses. Oh no. When in reality, that verse seems to be more directed at people who want to hate Jews. And I would argue that in the United States currently, one of the largest sources of anti-Semitic behavior is from Christian nationalists, despite their claiming of being all about Judeo-Christian values. Trust me, they'll cut off that fucking Judeo part just as soon as they can.
Oh yeah.
They don't agree with them either.
No, and they, it's all about the reason that they seem to like them, and they don't like them, they like the country that they came from or whatever that represents them is Israel, right? And the only reason they like that is because Jesus said that that's where he's going to be coming back to, so they need that place in order for their little end times whatever to happen, and that's it. Like it's that they could give a fuck less beyond that.
Exactly.
Crazy.
It is specifically using the Jewish people and their heritage and their teachings as a means to an end, something that hopefully we've got some people out there who are a little familiar with some philosophy and morality and stuff and would recognize that phrase as being problematic. So again, it's interesting to me that he chose that particular moment to highlight and be like, hey, have you ever thought about it? But like, Christians in America are kind of like this fake person who, well, Pilate was probably real, but this character in this story who like is often utilized as a super anti-Semitic thing. Like, we're kind of like that, aren't we? Like, have you noticed? That's a weird thing to say, in my opinion.
But I'd agree with him. Yes,
I would
y'all
too.
are like that.
I'm not
way too
saying he's
much.
wrong. I'm just saying that, it's a little odd to me, and it's kind of one of those moments where it's like, I don't know that you meant to say that, right? I don't
Right.
know that you understand what you're saying, but it's not as good as you think, my friend. So yeah, just
Right.
again worth pointing out. And again, I'll try to make these shorter, but it's difficult sometimes. I just, I don't get this opportunity to yell about stuff as much sometimes. So it's nice you let me come here and you just kind of take me off the leash and you're like, no, just run around for a little bit.
No,
Get
just
rid of
go.
some
Do
of
it.
that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, do the thing. You're good. Oh, that's awesome. All right, here we go. So, how often do we allow the fear of man to control us? More importantly, how often do we choose to submit to the fear of man over the fear of God?
Isn't that just disgusting right there?
Jesus.
So what he's saying is, by the way, not that the fear, not that the fear in and of itself is problematic, right? Because I would argue like fear of the masses, doing things just simply for fear of the masses is not a good reason. Like that's not a good way to persuade people, right? We shouldn't be utilizing fear as a way to get people to do things. That's problematic. That's harmful. Reason, logic, compassion, those are the things that we do. Understanding, nuance. That's how we do it. But like I just think it's so interesting that he's like, fear of man is bad, 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 bad. And you would hope that the person would go, yeah, because fear as a tool to get people to do stuff is a bad method. That's harmful. But actually what he's saying is, no, you just need to be afraid of the right thing. You
Yeah.
just got to be afraid of the right thing. When you're afraid enough about God kicking your ass, well, then you go and do good things. That's gross. That's a bankrupt morality. That is absolutely disgusting. You are doing things not because they are the right things to do. You are doing them because you are afraid that you will be punished by a magic man. That's
Right.
gross. Do things for the right reason, which is because they are right, because they are good. That's the reason you should do stuff. But again,
And that scares me too, because that's like this type of reasoning here is like the type of reasoning that gets people killed. That gets people hurt because like
absolutely.
I don't even care about what man thinks now. Now it's I get to do that. Like I believe God told me to hurt this person. Whatever.
Exactly.
And they could easily find a Bible verse in there. It literally says to murder your child if they
Yeah.
talk back or drink.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this makes
The Bible's not shy about letting you know that fear is the motivator it likes to use, and it uses it in terrible ways. And yeah, it's just so frustrating. But you see this, you see this in their tactics when it comes to, when you look at the Christian nationalists across the United States right now, you see fear as their number one tactic. That's the reason they're passing so many bills. That's the reason they're framing this particular bill, which is essentially nothing, essentially a massive nothing burger waste of your time reading through the bill, right? Because it is just standard boilerplate language. But what does he do? He stokes fear. He stokes fear, and then he tells people, now see, you're afraid of the wrong thing. See, you
yeah,
should be afraid. That's the correct response. But you should be afraid of the right thing because of the horrible things that it's going to do to you. Like,
right.
what's the worst that can really, I mean, look, hey, you don't want to go to jail. That's for sure. That's terrible. A fine of $10,000. That's terrible. You should be afraid of that. But you should be more afraid of being tortured eternally by a giant baby who's so upset because you didn't follow his hateful message. That's what you should really be afraid of. Like,
Yeah.
thanks, man. You absolutely are the one who has a solid foundation for your morality, right? Your moral compass is pointed in the right direction, not me, this silly old atheist over here who, like, just wants to be not harmful to people because harming people is like wrong. Yeah, you're the one who absolutely has your arrow pointed correctly, brother.
Right.
So
And it's almost like I mean, this isn't surprising either, just because like fear really does, especially in this day and age, it works. I
yeah,
mean, that's what gets people to
yeah,
donate money to a
yeah,
wall.
sure.
that needs to, and then they just pocket the money and the
Oh my
people,
gosh, yeah.
whatever, because like, hey, they don't want those types of people here, in our country, so
Mm,
and it's just because of the fear of them. Yeah, it works, unfortunately.
yeah, yeah.
uh,
And it's terrible. It's terrible that it is effective, because people look at that, people look at results a lot of times and say, well, the results are right, therefore this method is correct. But that's because they don't understand that there are lots of methods that can get you to certain results, especially if you've just already made up your mind about what those results need to be. If at the end of the day the answer is, well, I just need everybody to stand the fuck up, well, yeah, when you put a gun to people's head, people
they'll
will
do it.
stand up, because I don't want to die just for sitting in this chair. That seems really stupid. And if that's the only consequence is me standing up, then yeah, I'll probably do that for you, man. Uh,
Got
but
it. I'm on it.
but the consistency of that, right? How many times can you run that play before it just completely shuts down? And the answer is, as the days go on, you can't run that you can't run that same play more and more. And that's why we're seeing so many people stand up and fight. That's why we're seeing so many cries for freedom around the world, is because you as a horrible, disgusting, oppressive regime in Iran, you want to put a gun to the face of people protesting for just their right to live. And yeah, sure, you're going to stop a few protests that way. Absolutely. You're going to kill some of your citizens. Abso-freaking-lutely. But that's the reason that more and more people continue to come out. That's the reason that Iran is having one of the greatest moments in their history, is because of the fact that the more you try to intimidate people for what is basic morality, for what is basic in terms of just being human, the more they will stand up in the face of that smoking gun and say, load it again if you have to,
Right.
because eventually that play just doesn't work. Everybody knows it, everybody gets it, and they're tired of it, and they won't let it happen anymore. So yeah, again, fear is an absolutely disgusting, terrible motivator. But this guy says, as long as you're afraid of the right thing, that's how you find goodness. That's where you find the true benefit to society. But
Right.
yeah,
It's so manipulative.
ridiculous.
It's gross. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, let's see. Here we are. All right. When confronted with attacks on biblical values or on the body of Christ, do we give in to social pressures that oppose God's word, remaining silent to avoid confrontation or ostracization? Do we stand up for truth, or even if it means the loss of our job, our friends, or in Michigan, our freedom?
Again, just absolutely
Wow.
stupid. Just a ridiculous framing. But I'm gonna let him go till this Matthew verse here, because I think it makes a better point. But yeah, again, it's the same garbage, where it's just he's framing it in such a way as to be inflammatory, so that people will be like, oh my gosh, like, I
Oh,
can't
wow.
believe they do that, oh my gosh, that's so horrible. But like, let's just real quick, you guys, just real quick, like, let's look at one of those claims there, the friends thing. Okay, let's see. um let's take an example where you have a friend of yours, that really, really cool dude. You've known him forever. You guys have, tasted the salt of life, as Aristotle would say. You've gone through some trials and tribulations. You've grown to, with each other and all that good stuff. And they just happen to be Jewish. And then you've got this other guy, that you also know pretty well, the same, done the things, grown, all that good stuff, helped each other out, moved from one apartment to another, yada, yada. And they're a Nazi.
Okay.
What's wrong?
I didn't see
What's
that one
wrong with
coming.
losing the second friend there? What's wrong with losing the second friend? Somebody please make an argument to me where every single person who finds themselves in that position needs to still be friends with that hateful bigot. Explain
Right.
that to me. Somebody help me, please. Make that make sense to me. So like, yeah, there are examples here that they're not as radical and ridiculous as he's trying to frame it. He's trying to say, oh no, all of your friends are just going to turn around and stop being friends with you and blah 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 blah. And I think most of us would recognize, although we might not like to say it out loud because that means that we have to take responsibility, but I think most of us would like to recognize that if I, as a friend, was constantly running around slapping my friends in the back of their head, punching them even every so often, or just constantly yelling slurs at them for really even no reason, just kind of unprovoked, right? Like, I mean, I, I think we would all be comfortable with going, hey, man, people shouldn't really be your friend, SR. Like, people shouldn't hang out with you anymore because you kind of suck as a friend, you know? So it's like that when you put it in the full context, it's like, okay, so yeah, if you're being a hateful bigot regularly and then you lose all your friends, bro, uh, I don't I think the problem is you being a hateful bigot, not that your friends left you.
Yeah,
Again,
there's
like
reasons here for these
right,
things, you know.
right.
It's
Yeah, again, if you have a boss who walks up to one of your coworkers and says the N-word repeatedly to them and then fires them and says the reason is because you're an N-word. Like, I don't have a problem with that boss losing his job. Is our buddy Pete here trying to say that he's upset about that? He wants the rights of the bigot boss in that scenario to be more protected? I don't think so. I think
it's
he's wrong on so much of this article. I think he has lots of ideas that I would disagree with, but I'm gonna go as far as to say the man is human enough, and I'm gonna be as charitable as I can to say he probably wouldn't stand on the side of the racist boss there, and for good reason, because it's wrong and it's harmful. And so, why would this be different because the person is trans?
r-
Where's the disanalogous situation here?
well,
All
and
you literally
technically, he could actually, the person you're talking about in your scenario could point to the Bible to be like, here's why I'm a bigot against
Oh well,
biblical
yeah, I
the
mean, yeah,
heathen that
totally.
surround me. You know, yeah, there's a lot.
Absolutely. The Bible was regularly used to justify slavery in the United States. So
Right.
yeah,
So
for
yeah.
sure, for sure.
So
I
if
mean,
anybody's thinking that that analogy is far, it's not. It's not a
yeah,
far off analogy.
right,
You could
right.
totally point to the Bible and be like, here's why I think it's okay to do that to people of color. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. Anyway.
So it's crazy too. I thought he was going to use the just with the way he's talking here.
Hmm.
He's going into this Matthew verse, right?
You thought
But
he
I
was gonna
thought,
pick a different one.
yeah, well, I thought he was going to be like, "Fear not, the person that
Uh
can kill you." It was, I can't remember where it is,
mm-mm,
but it's like they
mm-mm.
kill you, and it's like, only fear the one that can send both body
Uh-huh.
and soul into hell or
No,
whatever."
he goes a different route, which I think is great, honestly, because yeah, I'll wait. I'll let you read it
Uh,
for the viewers, and then I'll say why I think it's great. But
yeah, here we go. Um, I often think of Matthew 12:30. And how we, as followers of Christ, cannot be lukewarm about the convictions of our faith.
uh-huh.
Okay, here's the verse, I guess. Whoever is not with me is against me, and whoever does not gather with me scatters.
So here's why I think it's great that he picks this verse, is because at this point um I feel the mask has fallen. I feel that the plans have been laid bare. And this is not coming from a legitimate place. So that that verse is a specific verse that is used in this black and white context, right? This is specifically attempting to stoke tensions and divide people, right? This is not
Right.
a verse that is intended to bring people together. This is a verse that is specifically trying to get a small community of individuals to be completely insular and antagonistic towards other groups so as to gain strength in their numbers and grow. This is a verse that is explicitly used and has been throughout history to justify hateful, terrible, destructive things. And the reason is because you're not with me. Because you don't stand shoulder to shoulder as we actively perpetuate harm on people, you also must be the subject of our hatred and our harm. Yeah. That's what this verse is. This verse is what is used to justify the Holocaust. This verse is what is used to justify the Crusades. This verse is what is used to justify every manner of atrocity that can be traced back to a religious thinking. This verse. And this is a verse that is scattered amongst various religions. Absolutely, absolutely the Islamic understanding of who one should be according to Allah, of how one should act according to Allah. This comes up, this concept comes up, and it's destructive because it is purposefully dividing people on arbitrary lines, people who truly do not sit in the same camp whatsoever. But what it is doing is it is saying, you have to make a decision.
Yeah.
Either you're a good person for no other reason than the fact that you agree with me, or you are the most wicked, horrible, harmful piece of shit that could possibly exist. You are either righteous because you agree with me, or you're the absolute spawn of Satan, the incarnation of evil itself. It's disgusting. It is another place that we find in religion that is in no way, shape, or form wanting to bring people together. That's what frustrates me when I hear religious people talking about the power of faith to just go over all of those different dividing lines, and somehow through the glory of God, we can find a commonality amongst us. No, we can't, because your religion exclusively says either I am in lockstep or I am an enemy. That's what this says, and that's how it's been used. And so the reason why I like the fact that he used this verse here is because I feel more and more what we're seeing from a lot of people on the farther right, on the Christian nationalisty side and so forth, is they're starting to say the quiet parts more loudly. And I don't want to represent somebody inaccurately. I'll let you tell your story, and then I'll show people where it's obvious your story is hateful, where it's obvious that your story is not completely genuine. He started out this whole conversation framing this as, be afraid. They're coming for you. Be afraid. They're coming. They're coming fast. They're going to get you. And you know what? You know why they're coming to get you? It's actually because they're just terrible people to begin with. So again, it's clear now how he's laying this out. He starts it out with fear. He tells you why you should be afraid. And then he says, and by the way, they're just terrible people. So it's a continuation of stoking those fears. It's purposeful as a matter to again to divide people and keep that anger high, because that's what gets people to act on this side. And again, and you, I'm glad you brought up that the other verse about, don't fear the ones that can kill you, fear the ones who can, fear the one who can do the ultimate punishment for it. Because if truly he was trying to go, if that's where his focus was, right, he would have used that verse. Right. He would have you. There are better verses to make the point about where your fear should properly be placed under the Christian system. But instead, he uses a verse that is explicitly about dividing people into two groups. And one of those groups, the reason that they're not with you is just because they're bad people. And he literally says that explicitly in the very next sentence. The very next sentence after that verse he uses is, This explains why cracks and gaps in steadfastness lead us down paths of unrighteousness. He literally says it. So yeah, that's why I was happy that he used it, is because it's like, look, man, say it with your chest. If you truly believe these terrible things, if you truly have hate in your heart, let it out.
And we're going to go ahead and wrap it right there. Yeah, so next time we'll be back for part 2 of my conversation with Elliot about Christian civil disobedience. And just so you know, this podcast was brought to you by adamandeve.com. Go to adamandeve.com and enter code word BX. That and you will get 50% off almost any one item, 3 free gifts. You'll get 6 free movies and free shipping on the whole order. So go to adamandeve.com and enter code word BX at checkout. We also have 2 new patrons. We have Vonrick at the $5 level. Thank you so much. That's so awesome. And you get special access to certain to stuff that a lot of that everybody else can't have access to. So including like Facebook groups and stuff like that. But and you get a bunch of extra content. But we also got H. Jasper as well. Both 2 new patrons at the $2 level. So thank you so much for that. That's super awesome. But yeah, and you know, what do we say to the haters, discriminators, and masturbator shamers? Fuck off.